Hey everybody, welcome to Performance Anxiety. This show features Ben Harrison. Ben is a unique guest. He's released his second album as the band Stutter Steps, but he's also curator for the Andy Warhol Museum in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Through his job and his music, he's had the opportunity to work with Dean Wareham and Britta Phillips of Dean and Britta, Luna, and Galaxie 500. Ben talks about the Great Sound series at the museum and what he does as a curator. He also talks about how the new Stutter Steps album differs from the debut and the role that Anthony LaMarca from the War on Drugs and St. Vincent had on the music. Follow Stutter Steps and the Andy Warhol Museum on social media. Follow us at Performance ANX. I'd love to see some new reviews, regardless of where you post them. Now let's jump right into the show with Ben Harrison of Stutter Steps.
Okay. This is Ben Harrison of the Stutter Steps on Performance Anxiety. I have a new album, Reeling, out. It was out on May 1st on Blue Arrow Records. Hope you can check it out.
Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight, man. I really do appreciate it.
Sure. No, thank you for reaching out.
Oh, of course.
Okay. So I was just, this is obviously recorded, not live. Yeah.
Right, yeah. It would be a really weird live episode.
Yeah, it would, yeah.
I've had a couple other podcasts, and one, they're both sports, and one we used to do live, and I remember the worst experience we ever had was that they had pre-planned breaks, right? And it was just, it was a podcast, but it was over the internet, so it wasn't like a radio show or anything. So I remember it was me, my buddy Mike, and we had a former linebacker, and I used to play with for the Redskins named Robert Henson. And so we would all go to Mike's house, set everything up, and chat for an hour about usually DC sports.
Yeah.
So we had our traditions. We would start every show with the shot of Red Stag, do 20 minutes, then it would hit a commercial break. Then we would go over to the counter, do another shot, come back, and finish up. We would do that each break. And I don't remember if it was the first or second break of one show. We were just chatting, and then we did our shot. And then like 15 minutes later, we're like, oh, shit. We haven't gotten back to the show yet. So we had like 15 minutes of dead air. And I was just, it was the worst. Fortunately, we would record it and release it later on a DC sports blog, so we were able to wipe all that out. But anybody who was listening was just like,
that's rough. Yeah,
it's terrible. It was absolutely atrocious. Terrible radio. Dead air is not good.
Oh well.
So, but like I said before, thank you so much for joining me. It's I'm really enjoying the album. It's got
thank you.
Oh, it's got a great sound to it. I love it. But before we get too deep into the album, I want to know a little bit more about how you got to that point.
Sure.
Did you grow up in a musical family? Did you start playing guitar at a young age, or how did you start getting into music?
Well, yeah. I mean, I did grow up somewhat in a musical family. I was definitely playing. I started playing drums actually first, probably in, I'll say, junior high.
Oh.
And my brother Brooke really was who got me into that. He's about 6 years older than me, and he was a drummer and kind of brought me into the whole world of rock and roll. And I rode on his coattails and went to his band rehearsals and
awesome.
That where he probably didn't want me to be, but so that. And then my father was doesn't play as much anymore, but he was actually a trumpet player in a Dixieland jazz band.
Oh wow.
And
awesome.
it was a band that he had where he was a professor at a small college where I grew up near, not too far from here, about 3 hours, in Meadville, PA.
Okay.
Called Allegheny College. And so I kind of grew up around there and grew up with him playing trumpet and taking me to rehearsals. And, so I guess I've just been around music for a while, but, definitely played in, my share of kind of high school and college bands. And, I moved to Pittsburgh shortly after college and was playing pretty regularly in different bands. And by then I had right before college, I kind of transitioned to guitar, very much self-taught. Just easier to carry around, I guess,
Yeah, you can't fit those drums in a gig bag, really.
You know how that goes. But I guess the thing is I was pretty serious about music when I, in college studied music and was playing and just wanted to be around music as much as possible, but I think what I realized is that I also, as much as I like performing and playing and being in the scene, I also really liked being behind the scenes and producing concerts and putting shows together. Right?
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. So I kind of got into that kind of seriously in college and was able to do a lot of kind of shows, as I think you can do when you're maybe at a small school. You kind of make things happen on your own and a lot of DIY stuff. And then I got into more, I guess you would say, like I started working for like an amphitheater near where I went to school.
Oh, cool.
And really got my taste of like professional performing arts, you know? And so anyway, I say all that to say that's kind of how I came to Pittsburgh. One was it was a place I wanted to be that a lot of my friends were after school, where I thought I could play music, but also I had this crazy idea that I wanted to try to work for the Andy Warhol Museum in Pittsburgh.
Okay. Where did that idea come from?
Yeah, it was the museum opened in 94 and I graduated in 96 from college. And so it was still just a couple of years old, and I moved to Pittsburgh with the idea that I wanted to play music, and that's all I thought about back then.
Yeah.
And I did that, but I think I was here about a year, and I just happened to have an opportunity where the museum was looking for someone to experiment with different performance related events, and I particularly had music in mind. Right. And it just kind of clicked and worked out. And so the museum kind of really became my, it kind of took over my life in a good way as a job. Right. And I, started to develop pretty quickly, a music program there. And also I should say, one reason it was such of interest, I didn't have a rich history coming right out of college with Andy Warhol. What I did have was just a deep interest in the Velvet Underground.
Okay, yeah. That makes a lot of sense because I can hear that in the music. Definitely.
Yeah, I can't hide it.
And nor should you.
Yeah. They're just one of those bands that I think like a lot of people you discover in high school or college and never realize just how, still to this day, I can't believe, how commercially unsuccessful they were.
Right.
But how incredibly influential they were.
Yeah, exactly. And influential, not just in music, but in pop culture.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I love that old. I think it was a Brian Eno quote where he said, that first album, the Banana record that Warhol produced, it might not have sold many copies, but everyone who bought one formed a band.
Yeah, I heard that quote. Yeah,
So I just had this crazy. It wasn't to me. It wasn't crazy. It wasn't a hard sell. Or I felt like. To in a museum dedicated to Andy Warhol that there be a music series and we you would start you can certainly reference the Velvet Underground and a lot of other bands that he was involved with in music and composers, but I never thought that it would become here I am almost 20 years later working as a curator at the Warhol Museum, really focused on on performing arts and music, and it's really been just kind of a dream. And the museum, I took just a big break from music because I've been around it obviously with the music series at the Warhol, but playing myself, I just, life gets in the way, right? Life changes. Yeah. I got married. I have 2 kids, and so I put it on a big pause button for, probably at least 10 years. And then I'm going to say maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I just felt like the kids were at a certain age where, we didn't feel like we had to hover, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah. I've got 3 myself. I know exactly what you mean.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. My wife is a working artist, and she's so she's very much, cool. Working on independent projects and things all the time. And
what kind of art does she do?
Pardon me?
What kind of art does she do?
Oh, she does printmaking, silkscreen printmaking.
Awesome.
Yeah, we actually met at the museum. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so she came to the museum from Houston, and we met there, and then she left shortly after to do her own work, and now she actually teaches printmaking at a high school as well. But
nice.
Yeah, so anyway, I at some point a number of years, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I just said, I think it's time to get back at it. And what particularly inspired me to do that was just the work, that I do at the museum and working with bands all the time and kind of living vicariously a little bit through them, right?
That's kind of what I'm doing with this podcast. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. It's
like when they get out of the van, and come in the museum and they're like, whoa, that's a whole experience, but just like that whole kind of lifestyle, which I feel like I've got a lot of empathy for, not having done a ton of touring, but certainly being in that world.
Yeah.
What that's like, the reality of it, and, show after show and city after city and playing to, small but appreciative audiences. And so I try to create a really welcoming and positive environment for folks when they come to the museum. And I just think through doing that and working with them, I just felt like I want to get back to this. And so sorry for the long-winded answer, but that's kind of how I got to Stutter Steps was, just taking a moment to say, let's get back to this and writing a bunch of songs and just going from there.
So you were touring with your band Tourister.
Yes.
Now, were you guys active when you started working at the museum, or had you kind of stopped because of the museum job? How did that all work itself out?
Yeah, I mean, Tourister, that was, a band that I started and was in as a trio originally, a very, very, teen beat kind of inspired, kind of, twee, straight ahead pop band that I really, loved. But it just kind of, I think it kind of ran its course, and I was in the band with a couple and that couple kind of moved away. And I think I'm glad you brought that up because that was also about the time, say like, that was right around 2000. And that's when the job started to really kick in as like a real thing. And, I certainly could have kept playing, but I just felt like, I'm just going to shift my attention elsewhere. And then it just kind of, took a detour there. But and then, but actually there is a connection between the two because right towards the end of Tourister, we kind of involved a new member, Cindy Yogmas, and so we were a quartet for a very short time, and then I continued to play with Cindy, kind of on our own, not anything formal to this day. So Cindy has also been a part of Stutter Steps, right? And has since moved, a few different times across the country, but we still, she's still very much involved and kind of has been like the core member.
Okay.
with me of Stutter Steps, since it became a thing.
That's also she bridges the two bands over the span of 20 years.
Pretty much.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you started this job at the Andy Warhol Museum, and you're now curating it. What exactly do you do as a curator? I've always been curious about that. What's like a typical day for somebody who's a curator?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a unique situation in that, I've been a curator there now, like I said, for a while, and really formally kind of developing the sounds. We call it the Sound Series is the brand. Okay. And really started that as a branded, like full-time year-round series in 2004.
Oh, okay.
So we did a good bit of experimenting. And I was fortunate to work with a director at the time who was just, he always told me he didn't want to be the director of the Andy Warhol Mausoleum.
Yeah, that's a great point. The guy's work is so vibrant. You don't want it to. Yeah.
So needless to say, we hit it off pretty well. So I said, well, I'd really like to shake things up and just start this series. And so so to your point, the day to day is a lot of coordinating and kind of selecting artists to be in the series. We do about 20 performances a year.
Oh wow!
Which for us, being a single artist museum with a staff of 30 folks and me being a department of one, it's about all we can handle. But it keeps us really active, I think, and we work in 4 different venues. We have 2 at the museum, a little 130-seat theater where we started everything, and we have about a 300 capacity kind of standing room, more like club type space.
Oh, okay, yeah.
In the museum, and then we have 2 kind of larger, old, turn of the century theaters, like a music hall and what used to be kind of a chamber music hall. So about 600 capacity and 2,000.
Wow.
So it's a huge range because that allows us to work with, I'll say, like Robin Hitchcock in an intimate 130 seat room where you really feel like he's sitting in your living room.
Yeah.
And then we can go to the music hall with Nick Cave and blow the doors off,
That's
so
fantastic.
It's a huge range. It's a real privilege to have those spaces available to us. And so anyway, to get back to your question, it's a lot of organizing that series and thinking about kind of what artists we want to work with and just the all the logistics that go into that. Obviously, working with lots of agents and artists directly. But then, I also work with the collection itself, which is a real treat for me and something I certainly never thought I would do. And, Warhol was just so prolific in so many disciplines. I mean, yes, he was a painter, and people know a lot of the iconic pop work with the soup cans and the Marilyns and the Brillo boxes.
And the banana.
He also films for almost a decade.
That's right, yeah. Yeah.
And so we have so many films of his, and a lot of them we have the entire film collection, and a lot of them are early 60s silent films.
Oh, wow. And
that has opened up a huge opportunity for us to commission musicians to create soundtracks for. Okay. So that's been a big part of what I do as well is kind of, working with, we've got a few different projects that have toured over the years with artists that I'll ask if they want to come in and watch a bunch of Warhol film and see what strikes their fancy,
Okay. So is that where Dean Wareham and Britta Phillips come in?
Exactly. Yeah, that's such a huge part for me of this whole story of Stutter Steps is, I was Dean and Galaxie 500 were like just huge for me.
Yeah.
You know, next to the Velvets and the Feelies and the whole like New Zealand scene with the Bats and the Clean, like I was just huge Galaxie 500 and Luna fan.
Yes.
And so at one point, I don't remember exactly how, I think they were touring. Luna was touring in around 2000 or maybe even before that, 98, 99. And we I just asked him, hey, do you want to come to the museum and hang out, see the archives, see some Velvet Underground, like lyric sheets or something?
Watch some silent Andy Warhol movies.
Whatever carrot I could dangle,
Yeah.
you know. And they did, and we just kind of hit it off. That's awesome. It was just, so I working with them, we did that in 2008. We did a project called 13 Most Beautiful Songs for Andy Warhol Screen Tests, and Dean and Britta just knocked it out of the park with
fantastic
13 songs for the screen tests. And, you know, it was just one of those things where, you know, it just hit a nerve, or it was the type of project that I think people came to because either they knew Dean and Britta or Luna, or they knew Warhol film, or both, and it just really took off. So it toured for, oh goodness, 5-6 years.
Wow.
Just internationally. And so it gave me an opportunity to not just work with them, but just get to know them really well. And that was a huge inspiration for me to get back in the game.
So that's kind of what got the juices stirring again for songwriting. It
totally did, because like being on the road with them and touring that project, and, you know, just watching in the wings. And I just was like, I got to get back on the stage. I got to get back. I got to pick up my guitar. You know, and then talking to Dean, you know, he just had so many great ideas, and he was always just very encouraging. So, you know, that's just kind of how it started. And the first record that we did is Stutter Steps. He actually, you know, had a guest guitar part on it. And, you know, so it's one of those things where it's hard to draw the line between work and you know what I mean? Because yes. It's all kind of one thing.
Yeah. And so for the first album, you actually went into the woods, into a cabin to do the whole thing?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Tell me that story. That sounds crazy. And did you record the whole thing while you're in there, or were you just demoing it out there?
No, the whole thing.
Wow.
It was all done within 4 days.
Oh my gosh, that doesn't sound well. It doesn't sound like it was done in 4 days. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, no, that was just one of those things where, you know, another reason that I started Stutter Steps is because I was started playing with this guy Jeff Barron, and you may know Jeff. He plays in a band called Essex Green.
I've heard of that.
They're on Merge Records, and he used to have a band that I liked a lot named Ladybug Transistor.
Okay.
And they were on Merge for a while, and he and his sister Jennifer are from Pittsburgh.
Oh,
and
okay.
Actually from the neighborhood that I live in now, just south of Pittsburgh. And so, you know, he was living in New York for years. He came back to Pittsburgh for a couple years. We got together, and we just really clicked, and we started working on these songs for the first record. And he said, you know, we should record these with Gary Olson from Ladybug Transistor.
Right. Okay.
Studio in Brooklyn. So we were going to go to Brooklyn and record. And I said, well, you know, I've got access to this cabin out in the woods, which I have to say, it really isn't a cabin. It's It's like a lodge. It's yeah. It's just through work. It's a long story. It's it's out in the middle of literally like a couple of miles back into the woods.
Oh wow.
But it's totally isolated. There's nothing around. And it's beautiful. There's a creek that runs behind it. And I was like, why don't we just go there and record? Like, it'll just be like no distraction, like, or whatever. I just thought, let's try it. And, Gary was up for it. So we brought a bunch of gear out there, and we set up shop. And yeah, so it was pretty, we didn't mess around.
Now, were the songs written and worked out before you guys went to the cabin?
Yeah. Yeah, I had everything pretty well worked out in terms of the songs were written, and and I had rehearsed different parts with I was fortunate to get a group of some great Pittsburgh musicians, some that I had played a little with before, and some that it was kind of a new thing.
Yeah.
And so Jeff actually turned out that once we scheduled it, just like a couple weeks before, he had to move to Vermont to take a job. So
oh wow,
he wasn't actually there. So that was my first experience in sharing lots of Dropbox files.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that.
Yep. Yeah. So we did that thing, but I think it feels like he was there when you listen to the record. So
yeah, I mean, it definitely doesn't sound like I guess like it was recorded in 4 days. It doesn't sound like people weren't present there. Everything sounds fantastic.
So that was just kind of this unique experience, but it really just kind of got the ball rolling. And I released that with a Pittsburgh label at the time called Wild Kindness, and I think it was just all the positive momentum around that record and the feedback, which I had no expectation. I just wanted to put out this record, and so that just kind of obviously is what led to the EP a few years ago, and now to this new record.
So on the first Stutter Steps album, was that the cabin on the cover of it?
Yes, that is the cabin on the cover. Yeah.
How did you come up with the name Stutter Steps?
I think it's because I'm a big soccer fan, and to me, it's like I don't know, it's just one of those like moves that I've always liked, and okay. It's that was it really. I just
it struck something with you.
I think a lot of it wasn't so much of a American football reference like Stutter Step, but whatever, it's all sports, I guess. But yeah, that was pretty much it.
Now the EP you put out floored. The track, the title track of that is great, and you have this really cool reference to Julie Cruz in it.
Yeah.
I love Julie Cruz.
When you would wake up in the morning on the floor, do you still hear Julie Cruz songs through the wall? And see her singing to you each time you fall off that wagon that's perpetually stalled, resting beside.
Yeah.
She's actually been a guest on this podcast.
Really?
But I've never released the show.
Oh.
You say Julie Cruz, and a lot of people have no idea who the hell you're talking about. So
yeah.
But I've always loved her music. I've always loved David Lynch movies. So
yeah.
It really was a weird interview. It was good.
Yeah.
But
oh, that's interesting.
So I was like, yeah. I got to find out if you worked with her because you don't hear Julie Cruz references very often.
Yeah. No, no, that, honestly, that's, I haven't had a chance to work with her, but to me, it was just, Cindy and Cindy more than me is a huge Twin Peaks fan.
Oh yeah.
And, somehow that song, it made me think of Twin Peaks a lot. And I just had to throw in Julie Cruz in there for Cindy, if nothing else.
That's when I was listening. I love Reeling, and I think it's great. But then when I heard that, I'm like, sold. You won me over even more with that. I'm like, this is a Julie Cruz reference. And then I'm like, maybe I should tell him that story.
Yeah.
We'll see if that actually makes the final edit or not. But all right. So I wanted to find out a little bit more about the new album, Reeling.
Yeah.
Is there a difference in how you approached Reeling as opposed to the first album and the EP?
Yeah, no, very much. I'm glad you asked that, because it's really, this Reeling is a total result of a friendship that I have with Anthony LaMarca.
War on Drugs, right?
War on Drugs, yeah. And just to make the connection back to Dean and Britta for a second, Anthony was actually the original drummer for the 13 Most Beautiful project that we did with Dean and Britta.
Oh, okay.
And he was like, at that point, this was 2008, he was, I think, still in school, like in college.
Wow.
They auditioned him in New York to as a drummer, and that was it. And so I've known Anthony for a long time, but, after he toured initially with 13 Most Beautiful, and he's just one of these, like, really genuinely sweet people and kind people, but he's just so talented, and he's become, he obviously, he's played with War on Drugs for a while, but he's also does a lot of session work, and he played with St. Vincent for a while.
Okay, yeah.
He started as a drummer and, played drums with Dean and Britta and with St. Vincent, but then kind of transitioned to, like, with War on Drugs for, the past several years. He's been playing guitar and keys with them.
Okay.
And so anyway, he moved again. He was another friend that moved back from New York, not to Pittsburgh, but to Youngstown, Ohio.
Oh, okay.
And, that's like an hour from here.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I started talking when he moved back to town, and he said, hey, I'm actually working out of an older studio in Youngstown called Peppermint Productions, which I had never heard of, but it's claim to fame from the early 70s kind of onward was as a polka studio.
I was going to say it sounds more like a strip club from the 60s or something. I'll go with polka club.
It's actually this beautifully well preserved, like, studio with lots of great analog gear, and
wow,
it's really a time capsule from 1973.
Oh wow.
And the owner of the studio is amazing, and he was the engineer for the project. So anyway, the record is totally different in that it's kind of the record the experience I always wanted to have, because it was just a lot of the luxury of just having a lot of time to play and experiment in a studio.
Okay.
As opposed to a home studio, or, the EP was, it was like we did a lot of tracking at two different studios in Pittsburgh. And then I just kind of shipped all the files to my friend Jason Quaver, who is in a band called the Paper Cuts, and he had a studio in LA at the time.
Okay.
And so then I went out there to visit him and did all the mixing. So it was a little disjointed, it was just kind of, it wasn't a lot of, it was just kind of very cut and dry, right? Like just crack down and send it off.
Oh, wow.
And then we, spent a lot of time with it out there, but this was more like, because Youngstown is so close, whenever I had a day and he wasn't on tour with War on Drugs, just several, afternoons we could spend together just kind of working song by song, and it was really just the two of us.
Wow.
So, I obviously played guitar and did a lot of the vocals and had the songs pretty much ready to go, but Anthony can basically play anything else. So,
wow. That's amazing.
So it was just kind of one-stop shopping in a way, and I also got to know Anthony as a producer, and he just really was hearing things in a totally different way that was really helpful to kind of push me a little bit out of my comfort zone and, explore some different guitar textures and sounds. And, so anyway, that's kind of how we did that record, was the two of us.
Okay. 'Cause the record sounds a little more dense, a little grittier, a little warmer even than the first album. And it doesn't sound like just the two of you guys working on it. I mean, it sounds it sounds pretty dense. It's got this fantastic warmth, and I don't know if I'm going to explain this right or say this correctly, but it sounds like an older album from the Northeast. It's got a Northeast sound to it with the keyboards.
Yeah.
And the guitar. I mean, the guitar sounds definitely like it's been influenced by the Velvet Underground. That's for sure. And, being New York. Yeah. I don't know. It's hard for me to, I'm not explaining it the way I want to, but.
Sure.
Did you use a lot of vintage equipment recording this?
Yeah, we did. I think that's the thing. I mean, I unfortunately, I'm not too savvy on stuff really too much. I mean, I do know the mics were all like a lot of old, like ribbon mics and tube mics, like really vintage stuff. And, that's the luxury. I could just show up there, with a couple of things, my guitar, my amp, but there was just this like, plethora of options to play with. And,
that's awesome.
Anthony was so good about, thinking like, well, this is how we'll mic this, and different amps and layers. And to your point, I think, there is just there's a lot more density there. There's a lot more layers and textures and, just multiple tracks of guitars and overdrive more, than I'm used to using. And I think it just really helped to, give it some range.
Oh, it does. I mean, the first single was Giant Sand Heart. That's a great track. I love it. I played that for my brother, and he's big. He loves, he's an older soul. And I like stuff from, I love old blues from the 1920s all the way up to stuff that's out this year. My brother, he specializes in stuff from the 50s through like the 70s. That's okay. But he knows everything.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got like every album ever released from 1955 to like 78 by everybody. It's insane. And I sent him the YouTube clip from of Giant Sand Heart, and he loved it.
You said you're on the side of science. That's one thing that you can rely on, and it's the one thing that helps me stay calm. Keep breathing in. There was a
great.
And I wanted to my favorite are Giant Sand Heart. It's got a great track, but I think my favorite song is Keeping On.
Oh,
I absolutely love it. That's got a slightly different feel to it than the rest of the album.
It does. Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing that Anthony kind of got me into was, I think the thing that stands out more about that song is, there's a lot of electronic drums in that song.
Okay.
Which, he would oftentimes play like a sampled track, like a drum, a certain beat that he found or had somewhere along with actual drums, like him playing them, but it added, like, there's a whole different frequency there. Like that song's got a lot of low end to it. and it's kind of got like more of a haunting quality. I think, it's a little, it's hard for me to describe too, but I mean, it didn't start that way.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it was more of a straight, ahead as probably jangly, more acoustic song that I would probably, that's just kind of my way. Mm-hmm. And I think Anthony heard it and said, wait a minute, like, let's slow it down. Let's add this beat. Let's like you said, there was a lot of keys, that kind of add the depth, I think, give it a lot of bottom end.
Yeah.
But no, thank you. I that's one of my favorites just lyrically, that's one of my favorites. So
yeah, that and Been Here. I think those Giant Sand Heart, Keeping On, and Been Here are my top 3 off the album. They've Been Here's got a really cool little guitar thing going. Yeah. I really like that little riff you've got going in the middle.
Thank you. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. That's actually, one of the few riffs that I play that on the record, that because I'm not much of melodies and solos are really not so much my thing. I try, but I feel like I'm a mediocre rhythm guitarist, and but that was something that I just kind of liked from the beginning, and Anthony and I just kind of bonded on that song over our deep passion for the Feelies.
Okay.
And I tried not to make it too like on the nose, but we broke out the bongo drums and the claves, and we were getting pretty crazy rhythms on it. So
that's awesome. I love it, and your vocal delivery is wonderful. I mean, it's just relaxed.
Yeah,
and I love that. It is a fantastic album to drive to. I've been listening to it for days. I've got a 45-minute commute from my house to my job. So, okay, for the last week, I've been putting it on and just listening, and before I know it, I'm either home or at work. So it's just
that means a lot. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for the music. One of the few positives about this whole coronavirus thing is that my commute is so much easier right now. There's nobody on the road. Yeah. So commute's nice and smooth. And right on. This music is helping it be a lot nicer of a commute.
Oh, thank you.
It's I guess it's a weird compliment, but
well, hey, no, I mean, I get it. No, thank you.
So have you been doing much? I know everybody seems to be on lockdown at this point. I know I've had a few other people on during this time, and I had one band on that hasn't even toured their album yet, and they're actually working on their next album before they've even toured the prior album because they've got nothing to do. Have you been writing, working on any new material while you've been on? Well, the whole world's been on lockdown.
I have. I've certainly been trying to take advantage of the time. It's tough. I mean, I think I've talked to Dean and a few other folks, about it as well, and it's a little hard to concentrate. I mean, there's just the anxiety, I think, of the moment. It's hard to just kind of tune that out and and just go there or go somewhere else, but it's one of those things where since I can't just fast track kind of projects, just because of my job and the folks I work with having a lot going on, like Anthony, like it takes usually a year or two for me to kind of get back on the horse and get something going. And, and that's, I mean, obviously I don't have fortunately I work with Blue Arrow Records now, who are I have to say, just a dream come true for me, because they're just a great little label out of Cleveland, and they are just in it for the right reasons, and there's no pressure or timelines or formalities like that, so it's
that's good.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, I definitely want to. I think maybe a 7-inch next.
Oh,
but,
cool.
Just because I haven't done that in a while, and something I could just do quickly, just to get something out.
Now,
yeah.
With when things start to ease up a little bit and venues start to open up, do you have plans to play Stutter Steps live?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's, touring has always been a little challenging. It's, just because you kind of have folks all over the place, in terms of like the live situation. But I'd like to, whether it's like, maybe touring in support of someone else, for, a couple of weeks. We've certainly had plans to do a number of, at least a few shows initially around the release. And we were going to do in June, and that's not happening,
right.
Obviously. But yeah, nothing concrete, but I would like to get out there and support the record a little bit if I can.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Hopefully you can, swing down the Mid-Atlantic, hit the Winchester, Northern Virginia, DC area.
Yeah, I'll have to get some suggestions from you.
Absolutely. Oh man, one of the coolest things ever to me was I follow a lot of people on social media. And when I first started getting into social media, that was one of the reasons I did it, because I went to college early 90s. I was up at RIT for photography from I went there in 91. So by the time social media really started rolling around, a lot of the bands I was listening to were just kind of spread apart. They weren't really super active. So I started trying to follow either whatever pages they had or some of their members just to kind of keep track of what they were doing, because I really liked their music. Right. And one of those guys was Ken Stringfellow from the Posies.
Oh, yeah.
So I was... he's done a lot of work with a friend of mine, Jordan Zadarozny from Blink of the Star. And one day out of the blue, I just get this direct message from Ken saying, "Hey, I'm playing a show in Winchester. You should come out and check it out." I'm like, "Yeah, okay." I don't think I've ever sent you a message. This is weird. So I replied to him. I'm like, "Yeah, I'll be there. No problem." Right. You know what? Because the venue is literally 5 minutes from my house. So I'm like, and nobody comes to Winchester to play. I mean, they'll go to DC, and that's like an hour and 20 minutes. It's not a terrible drive. It's doable, but I really gotta want to see you to go there. Yeah. But Winchester, hell yeah, I'll go see you there. Right. So he's like, "Hey, do you know anybody with some keyboards?" Yeah, actually, I think I do. My kid's guitar teacher might have. So I got those two hooked up, and Ken borrowed his keyboards to play at the Bright Box Theater here in Winchester. Oh wow, that's great. Really weird.
That was just a solo show, or
it was just Ken. He had two supporting acts, a local guy, and then a singer named Karen Allen, who was really good. And and Ken went up. The theater has two levels. There's the actual theater level, which I have no idea how many people it holds. Yeah. But they have an upstairs part they call out of the box, and that's maybe holds like 30 people. Wow. And that's where he was. So So we went up there, and we were chatting for a little bit, and thank you for hooking him up with some keyboards. And he played for like 2 hours. The album he released on September 11th, 2001, called Touched, and he was redoing that whole, well, not redoing, but supporting that album, playing it in its entirety, and then playing a couple extra songs on top of it. And it was really cool. I brought my camera and got a whole bunch of pictures of him. So
yeah, that's great.
So that's a place for you right here, the Bright Box in Winchester.
Box, okay. Thank you. The tip.
No problem. And it's not too far of a drive. I mean, Ken lives in France, so that was kind of a haul. Yeah. So how can people pick up the album? How can they find you, follow you on social media, and find out what you're up to if you are going to release something, and when you can actually go out and play a little bit?
Yeah. I think, our biggest, I think, presence, is definitely Stutter Steps on Facebook. But Blue Arrow Records in Cleveland, they're certainly selling the record. They have quite an online business, both just on their website and through Discogs.
I love Discogs.
Yeah. And it is in the process of being distributed. It will have distribution. I think during this time, like they were just saying that distribution has been held up quite a bit.
I imagine,
all this, everything that's going on. So, but they have a nice relationship with the distributor. So I'm hoping it'll be in, small record shops around. And
it's on Bandcamp too.
Yeah, that too. Sorry. Yeah.
I actually just pulled it up. I'm looking at it right now. So you can pick up all your stuff there.
Yeah.
And does the museum have an online presence where people can learn more about what's going on with the performances and the artwork there?
Yeah, sure. www.warhol.org is the website. And, that's in terms of, the sound series that I mentioned, that's all on there.
Oh, cool.
In kind of our music section. But then also, we've got quite a presence on Facebook and Instagram in particular.
So what's the museum doing during this whole lockdown phase that we're in? The museum has been closed, since mid-March. Right. And fortunately, a lot of us are still able to work from home, on things, particularly with me and the music series and everything. But, I think we're just in a holding pattern, like so many people, just waiting to hear from the governor and the state of Pennsylvania, the guidelines for this whole reopening recovery process, I guess it's called, Yeah. So I'm hoping that in the next couple of months we can get our doors back open. But I think it'll be a very gradual process. Yeah, because museum it's a public place. I mean, you get large groups there. It's going to be really. Yeah. I'm curious to see how that all works out. We've got all the national museums in DC as well, so it's just going to be a weird time for the next few months. Yeah, no, I mean, that's the social distancing protocols are really going to, what you kind of see in the grocery store right now, for example. Yeah. I think to your point, how that's going to apply to, museums and then even further into, obviously like, live theater events and, seated situations is a whole other thing, right? Exactly. I did see an article where somebody did do their first social distance live show at some club. Some article online. They had tables set and they had markers from where you should stand. And it was just really, really weird. Yeah. That wouldn't fly at anything but like an adult show. You can't. Yeah. You can't have Bad Religion on stage and expect people to be socially distant from each other. Right. So, but look, man, I've kept you for a while. Thank you so much. This has been a blast talking to you and learning more about what you do between the museum and the band. It's been really cool talking to you. I appreciate the interest and thank you. It's likewise. Hey, let's try